The roar of a V8 engine shook the windows of my living room. It was the sound of betrayal. I stood at the kitchen sink, gripping my coffee mug so hard my knuckles turned white, staring out at the driveway. Out there, Mark, my husband, and Dave, his precious little brother, were bouncing around like two oversized toddlers, circling a brand new glossy black Ford F-150 Raptor, a truck that cost more than $70,000. Dave punched Mark in the chest and laughed like a hyena. "You're the best. I told you. You always find a way." Mark laughed too, wearing that smug grin I used to love. Now it just made my stomach twist with disgust. He slapped the hood like some generous mob boss. "It's nothing, little bro. I said I'd do it, and I did it. I run things in this house." "He runs things in this house? Interesting." I glanced at the microwave clock. 6 p.m. right on time. I took a slow breath. The thick smell of overseared steak still hung in the air, the celebration dinner Mark had forced me to cook for his brother's new achievement. But steak wasn't the main course tonight. I picked up the dark blue binder sitting on the kitchen table, the weapon I'd spent all night printing, organizing, and binding. I smoothed my dress, put on my mask of dead calm composure, and stepped out onto the porch. "Hey, you two," I called, my voice sweet but cold, like the surface of Lake Michigan in January. Mark turned, cheeks flushed with excitement and probably beer. "Babe, what do you think? This beast is unreal, right? Dave deserves it after he had a rough time lately." Rough time, in Mark's vocabulary, meant Dave got fired for harassing a female coworker, then spent the last 6 months stretched out on my mother-in-law's couch playing Call of Duty. Dave shot me that half smirk, the lazy, shameless grin of a man who's always been served life on a platter. "Thanks, sis-in-law. Mark said you were on board with helping me out. That's family, right?" I didn't smile back. I walked down the steps, my heels clicking steadily on the concrete. "Of course, Dave. I actually have a special gift for both of you. Right here, right now, to commemorate this memorable moment." I held out the dark blue binder to Mark. His eyes lit up. What did he think it was? Insurance paperwork I bought for the truck? A check to help with gas? He snatched it up, beaming. "You're so thoughtful, babe. Let's see." But the second Mark opened the first page, his smile froze, then warped, then died. It wasn't a congratulatory card. It was a secured promissory note, stapled to a full-color bank statement with one line screaming in bright red at the bottom. Balance, 0.0, and the account title was printed clearly at the top. Lily's College Fund, 529 Plan. What the hell is this?" Mark stammered. Sweat started beading on his forehead even though the evening air was cool. "That's the bill, Mark," I said, crossing my arms. "You stole $72,400 from our daughter's college fund this morning. Did you really think I didn't set up instant balance alerts?" The air around us went dead still. Dave stopped petting his new truck, eyes darting back and forth. "Let me give you some backstory so you understand why that $72,400 matters. 15 years ago, when Mark and I got married, we had nothing but student loans and 2 sets of hands. Mark was a sales guy with a smooth mouth and a lazy streak, always dreaming about some fast, big break. Me? I was the practical one. I was the accountant. I was the woman up at 2 a.m. clipping coupons, cooking at home 7 days a week to save pennies. While Mark wasted time at useless networking parties that never produced a single contract, I picked up 2 freelance jobs. I built websites. I did tax books for small businesses. Every extra dollar I made went straight into safe investments. Mark has always been the face of our family. He loved bragging to his friends about the house we bought, the vacations we took in Hawaii. But he never knew, or never cared, who paid the mortgage, who booked those flights using reward points I built up for 5 straight years. He just enjoyed the benefits and soaked up the praise. But there was one thing I protected with my life: Lily's future. The second the pregnancy test showed 2 lines, I opened a 529 plan. I swore my daughter would never live on ramen or drown in debt the way we did. For 10 years, every paycheck I put 30% into that fund before I spent a dime on anything else. That money was blood, sweat. The nights I collapsed over my desk from exhaustion. And this morning, Mark erased it with one click and a forged e-signature, just to buy this rolling chunk of metal for his worthless brother. Back in the present, Mark tried to regain control, lowering his voice so the neighbors wouldn't hear. Sarah, you're overreacting. This is just a temporary loan. Dave will pay it back. He's got a big project coming up. A big project? I cut in, my voice sharp. What? Grinding his rank in a video game? And temporary loan? I leaned in. Mark, you withdrew that money as a listed co-guardian on the account, and you made a fatal mistake you don't even realize yet. Mark frowned, the arrogance creeping back. He snapped the binder shut and tossed it onto the hood of the brand new truck. Come on, I'm her father. I have the right to use that money in an emergency. Don't embarrass me in front of Dave. Get inside. I'll explain later. Yeah, sis-in-law, Dave chimed in, smirking. Money's just money. Family comes first. I looked at the 2 men in front of me, a thief and a freeloader. They thought they'd won. They thought I'd do what I always did: swallow it, keep the peace, play the quiet wife. They were wrong. Mark forgot something basic about me. I read every line of fine print. And more importantly, he forgot what he signed 10 years ago when we opened that account, paperwork he skimmed because he was busy watching football. I stepped closer, locked eyes with him, and smiled. A smile that made him flinch and take a step back. You think you had the right to take that money? I whispered, loud enough for both of them. You haven't read page 5 of what I just handed you, and you also don't know that the call I made 30 minutes before you got home wasn't to my mom. It was to my attorney and the IRS. Mark's face went gray. What did you do? I haven't done anything. I shrugged. Not yet. But the clock is counting down. You have exactly 60 seconds to decide your fate before I turn this celebration into a crime scene. Subscribe now if you want to see the look on this horrible husband's face when he realizes he just dug his own grave. You're not going to want to miss the secret weapon in the next part. People love to say money changes people. With Mark, money didn't change him. It just ripped off the mask he'd been wearing. This marriage didn't fall apart overnight. It was a slow death that started 2 years ago, when Mark got promoted to regional sales director. Everyone assumed it was his natural talent. Only I knew the truth. It was the result of 3 months of me staying up all night rewriting his strategy plan, fixing every grammar mistake in the emails he sent his boss, and even rehearsing his interview answers in front of a mirror. But the second he got that title, with a 6-figure salary and a platinum corporate card, Mark turned into someone I didn't recognize. First came the contempt. He criticized everything I did. The creamy pasta I cooked was too heavy, even though he used to clean the plate. The clothes I wore made me look like an old aunt, while he started strutting around in expensive Armani suits and drowning himself in cologne. The peak humiliation was at the company Christmas party last year. In front of 50 co-workers and subordinates, when someone complimented how careful and hardworking I was, Mark laughed loud, swirling his wine glass. Oh, please, Sarah? She's obsessed with coupons. One time she made me drive 5 extra miles just to save 20 cents on gas. Living with her is like living with a calculator, dry and boring. The room roared with laughter. I stood there with a warped smile on my face, feeling like someone had slapped me. That night, I didn't fight. I didn't cry. I drove home in silence. That was the night I realized this man didn't respect me anymore. Then came the waste and betrayal. Mark's business trips got longer. Strange charges started appearing on our shared credit card statements. Swarovski jewelry. I never received a single piece. Pricey steakhouse dinners on Tuesday nights, when he claimed he was stuck in late meetings, and membership fees at expensive golf clubs. He fired Mrs. Higgins, his loyal assistant who'd worked there 10 years and always reminded him of my birthday. His excuse was budget cuts. But the very next week, he hired a 24-year-old girl named Jessica, fresh out of college, as his senior executive assistant at double Mrs. Higgins's salary. I met Jessica once. She was young, pretty, and looked at me with the pity of a winner staring at the loser. She didn't know how to use Excel, but she was very good at giggling and touching my husband's hand every time he made a lame joke. Most wives would blow up. They'd scream, throw things, accuse him straight out. Are you sleeping with her? But I'm not most wives. I'm an accountant. And for me, emotion is the enemy of accuracy. So I chose a strategy. Silence is gold. Instead of confronting Mark, I played the role of the helpless, stupid wife. When he came home late smelling like unfamiliar perfume, I smiled and reheated dinner. When he snapped at me for forgetting to iron his shirt, I apologized sweetly. My submission inflated Mark's ego even more. He thought I was completely broken. He thought I was a sheep. He was wrong. While Mark slept like a king after his parties, I stayed awake. I became a ghost in my own house. I installed a keylogger on his laptop. I learned every password he changed. I accessed his iCloud and synced it to an old iPad I hid beneath a loose floorboard in the closet. Every flirty text with Jessica, "Miss you, baby," "My wife is so annoying." Every hotel check-in photo he claimed was a client meeting. I screenshotted, printed, and filed away. But more important than the cheating was the money trail. In finance, you learn this fast. Every cheater leaves financial footprints. Mark thought he was smart using cash from ATMs to pay for his mistress. He forgot that constant cash withdrawals from our joint account are a bright red flag. I built a massive Excel spreadsheet and gave it a code name, Project Freedom. 03 or 12, withdrew $500 at the ATM near Victoria's Secret. 0404, paid $2,000 for a leadership workshop in Las Vegas, really first-class tickets for two. 0520, transferred $5,000 to Dave with the memo Startup Support, actually paying off Dave's sports gambling debt. Watching our family assets bleed out day by day hurt like hell, but I still stayed quiet. I needed a final blow. I needed him to make a mistake so big it couldn't be fixed. And then, while I was digging through our family safe to find Lily's birth certificate, my fingers hit an old yellow envelope buried in the back, coated in dust. My heart slammed. Memory rushed in. It was a document signed 6 years ago. Back then, Mark had racked up a $30,000 gambling debt and almost got a visit from loan sharks. I had to use my premarital savings to save him. But I didn't save him for free. With advice from a lawyer friend, I made Mark sign a legal agreement called a promissory note and special marital asset clause. At the time, Mark was crying and panicking. He signed fast without reading the tiny appendix terms on the last page. He just wanted out. After the crisis passed, he conveniently erased the paper from his small, selfish brain. I opened the envelope. The smell of old paper hit my nose. But to me, it smelled like victory. There it was, bolded in Clause 4.2. In the event that the borrower, Mark, commits any act of financial fraud that causes damage to marital assets or dependent assets, children, exceeding $5,000 without the written consent of the lender, Sarah, all ownership rights to the current real estate and liquid assets shall. I smiled, cold in the dark. This was the nuclear weapon I'd been waiting for. All I needed was a trigger, one violation over the limit, And this morning, when the 72 time $400 withdrawal alert from Lily's college fund lit up my phone, I knew. He didn't just cross the line. He detonated the self-destruct button on his own life. Back on the porch, my hands tightened around the binder. Mark and Dave stood there with arrogant, defiant faces, completely unaware their death sentence was already drafted, just waiting to be executed. I took a deep breath, ready for the performance of my life. Like and comment. Silence is gold, if you agree. Smart women don't fight over cheaters with acid. They fight with Excel and the law. Come inside, I said, strangely calm, completely opposite the storm screaming inside me. We need to talk about numbers. Mark and Dave glanced at each other. Dave shrugged, muttered something that made Mark snort. They followed me into the kitchen, swaggering like kings who'd just conquered new territory. They didn't realize they were walking into a trial where the verdict was already written. I sat at the head of the dining table, the power seat Mark always claimed. I set the blue binder, bank statements, and the old yellow envelope, the secret weapon, on the cold oak tabletop. Mark opened the fridge, grabbed 2 beers, and tossed one to Dave. The crack of the tab sounded like a warning shot starting a war. All right, Sarah. Mark took a long drink, leaned back, and spread his legs like he owned the world. Say what you want, but make it quick. Me and Dave are taking that beast for a spin. Don't ruin the vibe with another one of your moral lectures. Dave kicked his foot up on my stool. Yeah, sis-in-law. It's just money. Mark said he'll pay it back. You're acting like he robbed a bank. Brothers help each other when times are tough. That's normal. I looked at Dave, then Mark. 2 faces weirdly similar, both soaked in selfishness and irresponsibility. Tough times? My voice went razor sharp. Dave, you got fired for sexual harassment not because the company went under. And Mark, buying a $70,000 Raptor is helping when you just drained your own daughter's college fund? Mark slammed his beer down, foam spilling over. Enough! Drop that tone. Lily's 8. She's not going to college for 10 more years. I'll replace that money in no time. You always worry too much. I'm the backbone of this family. I know what I'm doing. You're the backbone? I let out a bitter laugh. You think you're the backbone because you wear a suit and leave the house every morning? Mark, you've never been the backbone. You're a hollow post I painted over to make it look sturdy. Before he could react, I slid the dusty yellow envelope toward him. Do you remember this? Mark glanced at it, dismissive. What is that? An old love letter? Open it, I ordered. He clicked his tongue, ripped the envelope open, and pulled out the paper inside. He skimmed the first few lines. Then his eyebrows pulled together. The confidence started to crack. This is that old debt paper? He looked up, confused and mocking. Sarah, are you kidding? That was 6 years ago. I paid off the loan sharks. Why are you dragging this trash out? Dave leaned in, laughing. What is that? Some ancient IOU? Sis-in-law? You out of tricks? I folded my hands and stared Mark down. You paid the loan sharks? Sure. But you never read what you signed with me in exchange for the money that saved your life. You just signed to escape. Right? I stood, walked around the table and pointed to a section printed in tiny text on the last page, the section I knew he'd never looked at once. Read Clause 4.2 out loud, Mark. Mark squinted. His voice got slower. In the event the borrower, Mark, repeats any act of poor financial management that causes loss to marital assets or dependent assets, children, exceeding $5,000 without the written consent of the lender, Sarah. He stopped, swallowed. Keep reading, I said. The borrower agrees to unconditionally trigger the immediate transfer clause. The borrower voluntarily relinquishes all ownership rights to the current primary residence and transfers sole ownership to the lender as compensation and as financial protection for the family. The kitchen went silent. Even the fridge hum sounded loud. Dave's mouth fell open. What? What the hell? That means... It means, I said, voice flat, this house, the table you're sitting at, the TV you watch, the garage you plan to park your new truck in. Everything is mine now. Mine alone. Mark signed a quitclaim deed attached to that agreement. It was notarized that same day. And the moment I got proof of the $72,400 withdrawal, meaning you violated the over $5,000 trigger, my lawyer filed that deed with the county recorder's office. Mark stared at the paper, face turning bright red. Then he started laughing. Big, loud, manic laughter like someone losing their mind. Oh my God, Sarah! He crumpled the paper and tossed it onto the floor. You almost had me. You think this garbage has legal power? You watch too many movies. This is marital property. A judge will laugh you out of court. Nobody takes a man's house over a signature from 6 years ago. He stood, stepped closer, and jabbed a finger into my shoulder, an invasion he'd never dared before. Listen, smart wife, Mark hissed, alcohol breath in my face. You don't scare me. I'll call my lawyer. I'll countersue you for fraud and coercion, and I'll tell you right now, I'm not putting a penny back into that stupid college fund until I feel like it. Now move. I'm grabbing the keys. Dave stood up too, slapping Mark's shoulder. That's right, bro. A man's gotta be a man. Don't let a woman climb on your head. They laughed, turned their backs, and headed for the door, convinced I was just a paper tiger. They were wrong. I didn't stop them. I didn't yell. I calmly picked up my phone and opened an app I'd had ready for weeks. Mark, I called. He turned annoyed. What now? You're right, I said evenly. That paper might take months to fight in court if you want to be stubborn. I let my thumb glide across my screen. But there's something that moves much faster. Faster than your new Raptor. What are you babbling about? Mark snapped. You think I only prepared that one document? I smiled and held my screen up to them. On it was the internal company email system for Mark's corporation, an account I could access because of the keylogger. A brand new email sat in drafts, addressed to the company's Ethics and Compliance Board. Subject: self-report, expense report violations and conflict of interest policy breaches by Regional Sales Director, Mark Johnson. Attached were 5 PDF files documenting his use of company funds to travel with Jessica, fake client receipts, and most important of all, proof of kickbacks from a vendor 3 months ago, a federal crime. Mark's smile vanished. His face drained to the color of ash. Where did you get that? His voice shook. That's the real secret weapon, Mark, I said softly. The house paper was the appetizer. This is the main course. I held my thumb a hair above the send button. Now, I asked, are we going to talk seriously? Or are you still taking that truck for a joyride? Like and comment checkmate if your heart is pounding right now. Next part is the tightest 60 seconds of this terrible husband's life. The kitchen suddenly felt like a sealed tomb. The refrigerator fan sounded like a bomb timer hissing in the background. Mark stared at my thumb, hovering millimeters above my screen. Every drop of color was gone from his face. He knew I wasn't joking. He knew me. Once I built a spreadsheet, I chased the data to the end. Sarah, Mark rasped, hands lifted like he was surrendering to police. Calm down, don't do something stupid. Do you know what that send button means? It'll destroy everything. Destroy everything? I arched an eyebrow. No, Mark. You destroyed everything at 9:15 this morning when you stole Lily's money. That send button is just the cleanup crew arriving. Dave, still not fully understanding how serious it was, frowned. What is this? Some drama? It's just expense receipts. Worst case, he gets a warning. Why are you acting like it's the end of the world? Mark spun around and screamed at his brother, spit flying. Shut up, Dave. You don't get it. That's not just expense receipts, that's kickbacks, that's embezzlement, that's wire fraud under 18 U.S. Code, Paragraph 1343. If she sends that, I'm not just getting fired, I'm going to federal prison. Maximum sentence is 20 years, you idiot. Dave's eyes went wide. You really did that? I cut through their brotherly meltdown. I didn't have all day. Okay, I said, eyes locked on Mark. Law class is over. You like negotiating, right? Let's negotiate. I have one offer. One. I slid a freshly printed agreement to the center of the table. It was a separation and voluntary asset division agreement my attorney drafted while I waited for them to get home. This is your only exit, I said, voice cold and precise, like I was reading an annual financial report. Option A. I hit send. Your ethics board gets this email in 3 seconds. Tomorrow morning, security escorts you out of the building. The IRS and the FBI knock on your door. Actually, my door, next week. You lose everything. Your career, your reputation, your freedom. And you still owe me $72,400. A debt that follows you even behind bars. Mark trembled, sweat pouring down the collar of his expensive shirt. Option B, I continued, tapping the agreement. You sign this right now, it's simple. You acknowledge the validity of the agreement from 6 years ago and transfer full ownership of this house to me, unconditionally. You accept the $72,400 you stole from Lily's fund as your personal debt and agree to repay 100% plus market interest within 36 months. You give up legal custody. Full custody goes to me. You keep supervised weekend visitation until the debt is paid in full. You and that parasite of a brother leave my house immediately in your shiny new truck. You want to throw me out? Mark looked at me, eyes wet, suddenly pathetic. Sarah, this is our home. We built it. I built it, I snapped, slamming my palm on the table. Both men flinched. My calm cracked for one sharp second and the rage I'd held back for years flashed through. I paid the down payment. I paid the mortgage. You brought nothing but empty promises and dirty laundry. Don't talk to me about love when you just stole your own daughter's future to buy a toy for your useless brother. I took a deep breath and sealed my face back into ice. Then I opened the stopwatch app. You have 60 seconds to decide. The pen is on the table. When the timer hits 0, if your signature isn't on that paper, my thumb touches the screen. Start. I press the button. 59. 58. 57. The air turned thick. Mark stared at the paper, then at my phone, then out the window at the black raptor, the fake symbol of success he'd been chasing. Don't sign, Mark, Dave shouted, trying to sound brave. She's bluffing. She won't send it. We call a lawyer. 45 seconds, I announced calmly. The best lawyer in this city charges $500 an hour. You still have money for that, Mark? Or were you planning to use your company card again? Mark grabbed his head, fingers digging into his hair. He was calculating. His practical brain was racing against time. He knew I held the leverage. He knew the evidence was real. 30 seconds. Sarah, please, Mark groaned. I'll return the money. Give me 1 week. I'll sell the truck. The truck is already in Dave's name, I cut in. And the value dropped the second you drove it off the lot. You have no exit. Sign or go to prison. 15 seconds. Dave, give me the pen, Mark yelled, voice cracking with panic. Are you insane? Dave yanked it back. That's your house. Mark lunged, shoved his brother to the kitchen floor and ripped the pen away. That violent, cowardly move was the real Mark, willing to crush anyone, his own blood included, to save himself. 5. 4. Mark slammed onto the table, hand shaking so hard he could barely hold the pen. He scribbled his name on the line for responsible party. The signature was ugly, warped, but legal. 3. 2. He threw the pen down, breathing like he'd run a marathon. Done. It's done. Happy now? I lifted the paper and checked the signature. Perfect. I folded it and slid it into my purse, right beside my phone, still lit. Good, I said, stopping the timer. Smartest decision you made all day. I pointed to the door. Now get out. Both of you. You have 10 minutes to pack your personal items, clothes and toiletries only. Anything worth more than $50 stays, because under this agreement, it belongs to me. Mark stood there, numb. He looked around the warm kitchen, the family photos on the wall, everything he just traded away for temporary freedom. Sarah, he started, maybe to apologize, maybe to beg. Don't, I said, raising a hand. Don't poison my victory with your lies. Go. And remember, Mark, you owe our daughter 72,400. I'm charging compound interest. On the 1st of next month, if the transfer doesn't hit the account, that email will still be sitting in my drafts. Mark dropped his gaze and shuffled out. Dave scrambled up, shot me a bitter glare, and chased after him. 10 minutes later, I stood by the window and watched the glossy black Raptor back out of the driveway. It didn't look powerful anymore. It looked like a hearse carrying the remains of a failed marriage. They drove off into the night. Mark kept his job, for now, and his freedom. But he lost his home, his family, and what little dignity he had left. He thought that was the end of his punishment. But Mark forgot one thing. I told him he'd need 3 jobs to pay back the debt. And the contract he just signed has a very interesting income garnishment clause that I never even bothered to read out loud. His nightmare was just beginning. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The final part is the sweetest karma. 1 year later, when I run into Mark in a delivery uniform. And you won't want to miss the 3 hard lessons at the end. 14 months have passed since that night. Time really is a powerful medicine, but a healthy bank account is pretty therapeutic too. I sat on my porch with a steaming cup of chamomile tea, watching Lily play with the golden retriever we recently adopted. This house, once a battlefield of arguments and silent suffering, had transformed completely. I repainted the walls a soft cream, tossed out the worn leather couch Mark loved, and replaced it with bright, modern furniture. The air felt light now. No more stale lies, no more cigarette smell clinging to everything. Financially, I've never felt safer. My personal finance consulting business exploded after I shared my story, anonymously, on a women's forum. Clients poured in because they trusted a woman who'd walked through financial hell and came out intact. But the best thing? The bank alert on the 1st of every month. Ding. Amount received. 2,150 Losser's memo. Principal plus interest payment. Month 1436. I smiled. Lily's college fund wasn't just restored. It was growing fast, thanks to the 12% penalty interest I wrote into the agreement. You're wondering what happened to Mark, right? To pay that massive monthly amount and still survive, he had no choice but to work himself nearly to death. Just like I promised, I turned his life into a labor camp. I didn't need a private investigator to track him. I knew his schedule because I controlled the money. Job number 1, 8 a.m., 5 p.m. Data entry at a miserable logistics warehouse on the outskirts of town. After the ethics scandal, I kept my word and didn't immediately hit send, but rumors still spread and he got demoted, then eventually had to quit. No big company would hire him as management again. Job number 2, 6 p.m., 10 p.m. Food delivery, DoorDash touch Uber Eats. Job number 3, weekends, part-time stadium janitorial work. And this afternoon, fate lined up a coincidence, or more accurately, a live karma performance. A heavy rain started pouring. I'd placed a large grocery order for delivery because I didn't feel like going out. An old, beat-up delivery car pulled up. A man in a hooded rain jacket, exhausted, lugged 3 heavy bags up my steps. His head was down as he scanned the barcode, hands shaking from the cold. Hi, delivery for Sarah. Then the voice stopped. I opened the door, stood straight, and looked down at the delivery guy. He raised his head. The hood slipped back. It was Mark. He looked 10 years older. His hair was thinning and streaked with gray, dark circles carved deep under his eyes. The Armani suits were gone, replaced by a cheap orange uniform jacket spattered with mud. "Sarah," he whispered, voice breaking. He looked at me, then past me into the warm, lit house. He saw Lily laughing at the TV. He smelled lavender candles. He saw the heaven he threw away with his own hands. "Hi, Mark," I said, calm as if greeting a stranger. "Thanks for getting here on time. It's raining pretty hard, huh?" Mark swallowed, eyes dropping to my clean heels, then down to his soaked, torn sneakers. Shame spread across his face like ink. I'm trying," he stammered, like he needed to justify his humiliation. Dave played me. He sold the truck for cash and ran to another state with his new girlfriend. I got stuck with the debt on the loan. Plus what I owe you? I'm working 16 hours a day." I tilted my head and listened without a drop of sympathy. "That was your choice, Mark," I said quietly. "You chose to trust a freeloader instead of protecting your daughter's future. You chose pride over responsibility, and now you're living inside the results of your choices." I took the grocery bags from his hands. "Dave running is your problem. But remember, next month, Lily's summer camp payment is due. Don't let the transfer be late." Mark stood frozen in the rain. Water streamed down his face, mixing with something salty. Maybe tears, maybe just humiliation. He wanted to say something, to ask to come inside, to beg for a little warmth from the life he used to own. But I closed the door. Click. The deadbolt sounded final. I turned my back on the rain and the darkness outside and walked into my bright kitchen. I felt light. No hatred, no grief. Just the clean, quiet peace of a woman who took her life back. From the ashes of this marriage, here are 3 lessons I want burned into your brain. 1. Never hand over full control of your finances to anyone, husband, wife, or your closest relative. Trust is not a financial strategy. Always keep an emergency fund and check your bank statements regularly. Your neglect is fertile ground for betrayal. 2. Your children must always come first, not as collateral. Anyone, yes, even a parent, who steals a child's future to feed ego or desire does not deserve forgiveness. Protecting your child's rights is a red line that cannot be crossed. 3. Paper beats promises. Love can fade, but contracts last. Don't be afraid of prenups or legally binding asset agreements. When feelings run out, the law is often the only shield left between you and going broke. Thank you for following my journey to reclaim justice. If this story satisfied you, comment "Justice Served" below and share it with the incredible women around you. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next premium revenge story. Remember, living well is the sweetest revenge, but getting your money back is even sweeter. See you in the next video.